Hey everybody, welcome to Miscast Commentary, a coming attractions episode. I am Joe Finley, Todd Murray not here. We're in lockdown right now, so for the safety of all, we're not getting together right now. Just our way of being the coolest people in the world, basically. Not a ton to talk about though, because we're going to show you something fun. I have brought to you another interview, and I'm very excited to share it with you. It's going to be our first episode of the new year, 2021, starting off with a bang. We are talking to Fred Kennedy, aka Fearless Fred, who is a radio personality, a comic book writer, and has created this wonderful new Star Wars-based radio play, radio series, for a better term, I guess. It's called Mud 79. You can check that out on the Issue Zero pod. You can find it anywhere and all that good stuff. And you can follow him on Twitter, and just so much to talk about. So let's go right to Fred and I and our awesome conversation just a couple days ago. Hey everybody, we are here today with radio personality, comic book writer, podcast host of Issue Zero, and if you haven't caught it yet, you got to catch the entire series of his Star Wars-based Mud 79 radio play. Fred Kennedy, aka Fearless Fred, how we doing today, sir?
We're good, man. We're good. I got coffee with some 40 creamed whiskey in there. It's a good day.
It's a good start to a good day. How's the holiday been treating you?
Good, man. It's been so chill, and I think that it's easy to get down in the dumps about not being able to see this person and that person, but to me it kind of, the holidays can be a bit of a pressure cooker because we always have to budget family traveling because all our family is out on the prairies, and then we've got some in-laws up in Ottawa, and it's always when this person leaves, that afternoon we pack, then we go here, and so it can be almost overwhelming with all the things to do, whereas this year it's just been very relaxed. We went tobogganing.
Oh, nice.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I took the kids out yesterday.
All the little things that we squeeze in, now we're just doing, that's the day.
That's good. And it's a nice kind of just relaxing, pleasurable end to such a nightmare of a year, eh?
Yeah. It's, the year's been kind of an adjustment, but and I know it's been really bad for anybody that's owned their own business, and I don't want to feel like I'm minimizing that aspect of it at all, but I feel like it's been a great reset for a lot of people, finding new things to do with just your close personal bubble, or taking the time to do those little side projects that you may or may not have had time to do before. I mean, that's where the Mud 79 thing came from, was because I had time to do it, and we've all got those things. Oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm good. Then you just never do them. Mm-hmm. Just do it. Now is the time where you can find that extra time to do things. If you're in a position where you're not having to work extra hours, like if you work as a healthcare responder or something like that. Their hours. My wife works for Canadian Blood Services, and they are busy right now.
That's awesome. Actually, my wife, she had a tattoo on the horizon. Then everything happened with the lockdown again, and then so that got canceled. So her first thing is, oh, good, I get to go donate blood again. So that was
hooray!
Yeah,
hooray.
That was her great joy. I mean, I'm super anemic. I can't do it. I pass out, but she does it all the time. So that was a big silver lining for her. So that was great. Now you have been on the radio during all this craziness, and I've seen on your Twitter you've been dealing with a lot of fun people, as it were, as far as how they react to the simplest niceties of, hey, take care of each other, wear a mask, and that sort of a thing. So what's it been like getting kind of that rain down on you all day?
You've got to be I have two minds. I've got a little pressure valve, and if I don't pass the threshold, I can write it all off, because you deal with that whenever you're in the public. You deal with that stuff, all that negativity. You're a target. People want to vent to you. They forget that you're a human being. That's just gonna happen. It's just the way it is. But this has been, it's been 0 to 100 like that. Everyone is so sensitive. And what I'm finding frustrating about it is the people that, from my experience, that are the most sensitive aren't people that are watching their businesses implode, or aren't people that are working as frontline healthcare workers that have suddenly lost every shred of free time. It's people that are just reading things on the internet and forming a strong opinion because it makes them feel good and makes them feel smart. And one of my radio influence people, like a guy that I worked for when I was in my teenage years, gave me this book. We didn't give me this book. He told me to read this book called My Year Among the Truthers. And it's a book all about, like, he's a psychologist who went in with all these like conspiracy theory people and kind of analyze their psychological profile and the way they tick and what they do. And I know it seems weird, but that really helped me a lot. Because you can understand the desire. It's about a desire to see through the lies, to find comfort in knowing that you're smarter, you figured it out, and everyone else isn't. So you are the best. You're really smart. But at its core, that whole mentality is that it's comfort to know that everything is under control. It's just a bad person doing it. That is easier to accept than understanding we have no control and we're just floating in an ocean of chaos. It's easier for them to swallow that than, that's a Timothy Leary line, by the way, the ocean of chaos. It's
Nice.
easier for them to swallow by the big shadowy guy behind the curtain than the ocean of chaos. So once you know that, it's like they're scared and that's why they're attacking you. So just deal with it. It's fine. It doesn't bother me.
Oh, that's cool, because I have a similar thing. I something I've been trying to understand, especially because I find myself getting into stupid Twitter fights all the time.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying really hard to understand that. And my co-host, who wasn't able to be here because of everything going on, he always gives me shit. We sit down and I'm like, oh yeah, I got into this stupid Twitter war about even the dumbest things, like the Snyder Cut. He's like, why do you let yourself get into that? And is like, just think of where people are coming from. And with this, I've really sat down and thought about it, and it's exactly that. It's just a loss of control. And if there's one thing that they feel like they can control, then
yes, the loss of control. That's really it. That hits it on the head.
Yeah, so it's been really crazy, but I think I've calmed down, and I think I've spent more time with my kid. I've been off this week with my kids, and I've done very little of any of that. Or if I read something like that, I've been able to blow past it. So that's been it's been good. It's been good for my psyche, and I think that everybody just kind of easing up on each other, especially online, would be just wonderful for each other's psyche, especially right now, because all you're doing is basically you're saving your best self for in the house, and then all the pent up rage you're launching out at people from afar.
Yeah.
So we were talking just kind of before this started, just about kind of how all that has affected working and stuff like that. And you were saying that you've basically been able to work because you're on your own in the room and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Has there been any of the, like, I'm such an introvert that I get such a sense of like relief having kind of that like time away from people and stuff like that. But do you ever get those moments of, I kind of miss people just a little bit? Like, I wouldn't mind seeing people from time to time.
Well, you get it, because the kid thing. I live on a street that is going through not urban renewal. That's not the right term. A generational shift. Whereas all the original owners that bought these houses in the 60s are all moving in with their kids somewhere else, or there's all kinds of young families moving in. So our street is full of kids. So what I miss is we always like open the doors and then the kids run out onto the street and are hooligans, and then we just chill out with the dads and hang out. And
Nice.
that is what I miss the most, is hanging out with my neighbors, because we've got a really tight knit crew. Like the 6 houses. There's 6 houses in a row here.
Mhm.
All of us have kids the same age.
Oh, nice.
Like it's just, and you watch them, the kids, like a mass of them, just they go along and then they go back and then they go back and then someone is mad at somebody and then they break apart. Then they're back together half an hour later, and that is what I miss the most.
Mhm.
So we really only have a bubble with our neighbors, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Mhm.
Like all our family lives out, like I said, all our family lives out west. We're all in the prairies.
Okay.
So there's no going to see family members. It's us and our neighbors. That's it. That's our bubble.
Mhm.
And I miss being able to just go sit on some guy's lawn and have a beer and then go to that guy's lawn. And that's what we do all summer. It's
Mhm.
like, that's the way it goes. But that's just not happening right now. That is
Mhm.
something I will admit that I miss, because like all the dads on my street are big Star Wars fans. So we all talk. So I've missed that rapport while I've been doing the Mud 79 thing, especially because
Mhm.
I bounce ideas off. Two of the dads specifically are guys that I will bounce ideas off of, and I don't have that
Ah.
network anymore right now. So frustrating.
Well, it's nice to have somebody, because we've got family friends and stuff like that who, yeah, we talk Star Wars all the time, and those are the people they'll come over, and I'm like, I gotta break out my bin of the vintage toys, and it's like, check it out, you haven't seen since I got the ATST, make them walk, like that kind of nonsense. But yeah, it's been tough. It's my hope that I mean, it's a thin hope at this point, but it's my hope that by the time that summer rolls around, we might be in a situation. We'll be in a situation where we can be amongst each other again, at least in a more raised capacity. And
I think by the early fall, and this is just something I've heard consistently with people I know that work in the healthcare field, like
Mhm.
nurses and doctors at hospitals specifically, both here and one of my friends' wives up in Barrie, and they were saying September. That's like that'll be the break month. Is September is when you're going to see a massive shift in things. And would I rather that be March? Absolutely. But September, we're more than halfway. You know, we're
Yeah.
more than halfway at this point. And I believe we can pull through. And I hopefully cooler heads will continue to prevail. I mean, we've talked about people being mad, but I really do believe that it's maybe 10 or 15%
Yeah.
making a lot of noise.
Mhm.
And a lot of people are just calming down, like your co-host, calming down, not getting engaged, and just being like, just spin your wheels, you know, just go ahead. I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
So I think we'll be all right. I'm confident we'll be okay.
Yeah. I'm hoping too that the light at the end of the tunnel might give everybody just kind of a better sense of peace and stuff like that as well.
A lot more certainty at this point.
Absolutely. Something else I wanted to talk about. You have been a writer of comic books for some time, and you've gone to some cons and done that sort of a thing. And so how did that kind of leading into writing something like Mud 79, how did that style of writing kind of help or inform how you would write something like a radio play?
Comics led directly into Mud 79 because it was actually at ECC a few years ago. I mentioned this on the Mud 79 Twitter feed. Daniel Warren Johnson had just released Green Leader. And I don't know if you've ever read Green Leader, but it's this little ashcan comic that he did a little. His art, first of all, it's Daniel Warren Johnson, so it's incredible. But remember the scene in Return of the Jedi when the A-Wing spirals out of control and goes right into the control tower of the Star Destroyer?
Yes.
He wrote a whole comic about it.
Oh, really?
All about that pilot and his life, what led up to it, what was going on during the dogfight. And Daniel Warren Johnson's art is just incredible. And he did this little black and white ashcan, and it became like the thing that everyone wanted at ECC that year. And I went by and I bought it. And the thing was he was asking for money to pay for the printing costs, and everything else was a charitable donation.
Okay.
And he had a little sign, I don't own this. I don't own nothing with this. It's just something I wanted to do. I'm like, cool. I love that. And so when the pandemic rolled around, I had 3 projects that had been greenlit. We were in the process of negotiating contracts, and it all kind of imploded with the beginning of the pandemic because so many smaller imprints really had to ratchet themselves in. What are we doing to define ourselves? And so I was very upset because I felt like this was my big break year, and then it all kind of broke. So I didn't have the money to go finance a bunch of comics on my own, but I work with audio professionally. Like, that's my day job. So I decided I'm going to do this as a radio play. And I'd been hammering out the idea and tinkering with it for a long time. And the biggest adjustment from a writing perspective with this versus a comic is that when I'm writing a comic, my panel descriptions are 3 or 4 sentences at the most, unless it's a big splash page with a bunch of really important little Easter eggs and details I want in there. So with this, I have to, and I'm stealing a line from my producer, Dila, that I call out in the podcast constantly, because she's very good at her job. And she gave me a line and she said, imagine I'm blind and tell me what's happening. And so that version of describing a scene is incredibly different than what you would do when you're laying out comic book panels. There's also no big even page reveals. So if I want to like make sure that I grab them and bring them in strong, I've got to change the way the audio works so that I have a big transition with the audio, so that all of a sudden your ears tune in, because your brain is programmed like you kind of, vision will catch your eye. Auditory transitions catch your ear.
Yeah.
And your brain works so weird with sound. Like it's such a psychology type of thing. But if you have a change in voice, immediately people will pay attention. So I'm timing where I have additional voices for when I feel like I need to grab somebody in. Do you know what I mean? So there's a different writing process for sure. But the idea of telling a story and pacing a story is still very similar.
Okay, now that's cool. And had you, prior to, well, just being a Star Wars fan, period, have you ever heard any of the old Star Wars radio plays? They did the original trilogy, they did Old Republic ones, they did Dark Forces, all those good ones. Did you ever catch those?
Yeah, I've listened to the PBS radio plays. But they were more of like a pure radio play. I have this, if anybody's listened, it's like a hybrid of a book on tape with a radio play.
Yeah.
And I found that I got more out of the Thrawn trilogy books on tape, because a lot of those like expanded universe books, when they adapted them to audio, they didn't just have a read. There was sound effects and music and pacing, and it was a really big production. I wanted to take that aspect and then take it up a notch. And so the production, I wanted something fully immersive, but I wanted it to feel like as if you're watching a Star Wars movie and someone's describing it to you more so than anything else.
Excellent.
And so finding the voices and then being the narrator and the first person perspective and all that stuff. But the PBS plays I really loved, and I'm, given that I do radio professionally, I could tell what they were doing and when they were moving things around, and I really liked it. But I do believe, if I'm being fully honest, the books on tape, in particular the Thrawn trilogy ones, where you've got Luke running through the woods with Imperials and Talon Card smugglers all over the place, and you can hear the sound of the AT-AT walkers coming, and he's trying to get away. Like that, to me, although it's different than what I'm doing, I found it very applicable to what it is that I'm doing.
That's awesome. And that's kind of what I was getting at too, is just the idea of, see, the thing for me with the with the radio plays, even the ones that were the original trilogy, is it gave you an expansion. It gave me something I just never had from Star Wars. And it was the same thing with Dark Forces. And I hadn't read those comics. I hadn't read certain of the books. And so I was getting in all this new stuff. And that's something very much that Mud 79 can do, but it does it on a very different angle, because it's not talking about this huge Jedi that we all know in a side story or something like that. It's giving you something that exists within that world. And I feel like Star Wars is the only place where you can really do that. Is you can just pick anything out. And it's like you were saying with that A-Wing pilot. You could just tell a whole story behind that one guy. And so what is it like kind of diving into that world without having the need for all those kind of iconic character types?
Initially there's always like I can work this guy in, but then I've one of my biggest issues that I have with Star Wars is they have this entire universe where they're constantly talking about the scale of this universe, but then we always focus on the same group of people, and it's kind of frustrating, because when you look at the numbers, the process of putting Mud 79 together was like a series of things that just kind of came together. But at the end of Return of the Jedi, all right, the Emperor dies. There's still almost 40,000 Star Destroyers out there, Imperial class. Like, there's almost 40,000 of them out there, and each one of them has like 50,000 soldiers on it. So that's a lot of people, and it's just that it's not just done. So all of those people, like all the stories you can tell about that, and there's this watercolor painting by this Italian artist, and it's of a scout trooper. And I know that anybody who's searched for images of scout trooper has seen it. I forget the name of the artist specifically, but it's a scout trooper, and he's in the rain, and he's muddy, and he's leaning up against the tree, and he's holding binoculars, and he's got the rifle in his arms, and it just has this air of desperation and defeat. And the initial idea for Mud 79 was of a scout trooper at a small outpost on a planet after the Empire was falling apart, and it was, hold the line, boys, this is it. Like, we stay and we fight until we die, and that's the end of it. And that was the initial concept for the story, was based off of that painting, because it's so great. And there's another painting of it's a stormtrooper, and he's curled up on a ball on the ground, like, looks like he's defeated, and desolation around him and whatnot. And there's such humanity in those pictures, and I feel that that's the thing that has been desperately missing from Star Wars, is the humanity of the Imperials. They're always just a bunch of tropes crumpled up into a ball and thrown somewhere. And I think that is what makes the Mandalorian stand out so much, is that there's such a spectrum. Like, we're rooting for a guy, and people forget it, but we're rooting for a guy who, in the very beginning of the series, gives scientists a baby he finds. Like, that's the guy that we're rooting for. Like, yes, he goes back and gets him, but at the time, there's no he's like, here you go. Okay, here's my money that I got for it. It's like, and that to me shows the concept of a redemption arc, which is the most powerful storytelling vehicle. I think it's my favorite, the redemption arc, like the great fall of humanity. And so I wanted to tell a story from the Imperial perspective that wasn't about these awful individuals that are like, hey, how was your day? Yeah, I ate some babies. You know, like, I didn't want to have, like, that's what I feel they do. And it's bad, because I thought that, I know that people dump on The Last Jedi, but there was such a great, we're all the same moment in that movie, for all of its flaws. It had some really great ideas. And then immediately afterwards, nope, we're done with that. They're bad and they're good, and that's just the way it is. I don't really like that. And I feel that Star Wars fans, as a collective, we're ready for something a little bit more. So that's the Mud 79 aspect.
Yeah. And that actually was something that happened in The Mandalorian too, was that scene with Cara Dune speaking to the pilot, when he made the point of, she made the quip about the Death Star, and then he's like, you think it's so funny? He's like, you know how many millions of people, like, you know, it affected him. It was as meaningful to him as Alderaan being destroyed was meaningful to her. And, you know, you're just two sides of the same, the same
coin, or Mount Calamari flan, if you will.
Much better.
That, I really loved that show, especially the Miggs Mayfield episode, The Believer. To me, I think The Believer was the best episode in the series. Don't get me wrong. I know when that X-Wing flies into the cruiser, yes, I got emotional. Okay. I really did.
Everybody did.
The scene where he's at the table and he's Bill Burr, Miggs Mayfield, and that
Mhm.
officer are talking, you can feel as soon as the guy says the word hero,
Mhm.
it just everything changes.
Yeah.
And that is the world we live in today, where people are branded heroes for doing things.
Yeah.
But what does that mean to be a hero? And you've had that look on his face of Miggs Mayfield resenting not just the empire, but himself for ever believing in it, because he sees what they are.
Yeah.
They're now at the point where they're murdering and butchering civilians and their own soldiers just to get back at them,
Yeah.
and that's where Mud 79 was heading. I have to tweak things because I don't want to be accused of doing the same types of things.
Yeah, no
But
doubt.
I love that idea that people can redeem themselves and learn from their mistakes and realize they were wrong. I think just accepting that you're wrong about something is a huge, huge sign of moral fortitude. And I loved that scene so much for it. Just got to sleep at night. Oh, it's so good.
Oh, it was so good, and it's like you said too. It's just these things. And actually, we've been rewatching the series because my wife watched The Mandalorian, loved it. She's like, I feel like I need to rewatch the Star Wars series because she never gave it a serious enough shot. So we've been doing that. So life's been awesome. But one of the lines that's in the crawl for Empire Strikes Back, which we just watched yesterday, was there are heroes on both sides, and that made me think about that a lot, and it made me think about what you were doing with Mud 79 going into this interview, because you've got this guy who's a grunt in this war, and this what I wanted to get at is you decided not even to make him a stormtrooper. You like lower than a stormtrooper
Yeah.
and all that, but still very much a part of this war and a believer, when it all goes. And so like, how do you get into the mind of that when you're writing that character, when you have, we have years, decades of experience of seeing that these guys are the dark side, these are the bad guys?
Well, we can go back to the scale of the empire and the way the empire works. And that the empire is really just a collection of kingdoms, not kingdoms, but like districts. And each one of them has their own chain of command and their own Grand Moff running things, like the Grand Moff system, whatever you want to call it. And when you look at the scale of that, and you look at the way empires and kingdoms on just Earth have worked, there really is the emperor's at the top, and as long as all the money's coming in, he's not sitting there on the phone calling a supply clerk on an outpost somewhere being like, all right, everyone following you? Okay, all right, everything okay, good, thanks. Keep me posted. Like, that's not how it works. He's got bigger and grander concerns. So the empire, in the much I tried to break it down the way the Roman Empire would have operated. And that is that it's very pragmatic and accepts the needs of the region that it's in, and then keeps it in order. And as long as it's in order over here, no one over here is going to care about it. You know what I mean? So that's the way, when you're talking about the scale and scope and size of the Galactic Empire, to me, that's the only way it can operate.
Yeah.
So thinking in those terms, I found it very freeing. And I started one of the big things I added was alien races being part of the empire, because from a pragmatic standpoint, they would need to be. That would be just the way it is. So my version of the empire is this planet that they're on. The soldiers that are there, for the most part, aren't from there, because it makes it easier for them to keep order without siding with the locals on any big issues, which is something that the Roman Empire used to do. So if you're in Germania, you're keeping order in Germania. The soldiers there are from an area that wasn't necessarily allied with Germania before the Romans came in, because that will keep them from working with the locals to undermine the new imperial authority. So that was like the function of like the structure and building of the empire. But from a pure character core standpoint, I really did a lot of reading about Vietnam. and the Vietnam War. Because when you look now in hindsight, the Vietnam War, we're very comfortable with talking about the atrocities that were committed by the Americans in Vietnam. And I am one of those people that I grew up in a military household, and even my dad was very open and honest about they did bad things over there. But why did they do bad things over there? And so there's that Ken Burns Vietnam War doc, which is phenomenal because it's a complete and total dissection of the entire Vietnam War. I think it's 20 hours long. It's very, very long. And what's amazing about it is, just like with Mud 79, it's not about so much the war as the people that we're fighting on, not the Americans, not just the North Vietnamese, but the South Vietnamese, the civilians, the South Vietnamese soldiers, the humanitarian workers. They talk to everyone, and you get such a well-rounded perspective about everything. And there was this one guy that was interviewed, and he's talking, and he said, I grew up in a house where my dad fought in the Second World War. All his closest friends were the buddies that he went and signed up to go fight in the war with, and they were the best of friends to that day. There was a bond they had that I always wanted. The Korean War came along. My cousins went and fought in the Korean War, and their best friends were from the Korean War. When the Vietnam War came, and JFK is on TV saying, ask not what your country can do for you, but you can do for your country. I looked at my dad. I looked at my cousins. This was my war. This was my fight. And that's just the Vietnam War. Imagine if you're on a planet where the Trade Federation comes in and is like, this is our planet now. You're all going to have to leave, or we're going to enslave all of you. And that's just the way it is. And then the Republic rolls in with this army, and they're like, no, this is their land. We're going to fight for them. They liberate the planet, and now you're part of the new Republic. And then and you grow up in this world where everything you owe to the Republic. And then, well, there's a political change, but it's still the same thing, because you think of how removed we are from just Ottawa. And we're just down the highway. So imagine if Ottawa is Coruscant, and it's so far away, even traveling at like light speed, it'll take you a year to get there. Imagine how removed from it you are. You're not going to care. All you're going to see is, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have my life. My brother fought for the Republic. My sister fought. My aunt fought. Like the main character, he's got all these ties to the Clone Wars because he grew up during the Clone Wars watching all this HoloNet propaganda about the Republic. Do your part. And now it's the Empire. He's got no real options because he's on this like backwater country bumpkin planet, and he doesn't want to be a farmer. He just doesn't want to do that. So Luke didn't want to be a moisture farmer. No. What did he do?
Farms are apparently just really boring in
that world. Well, he's very blunt. He's 17, and he's filled with like this desire to go out and do something. And so I'm going to go fight. And then when he joins the army, all the people in his unit are all in like the same boat. And I did that intentionally, very intentionally, because when you watch this Vietnam doc, and it's so telling, all the people that volunteered are all from the Midwest, small town, no real options. I wanted to play football. I didn't get drafted. I didn't get to go to the college I wanted. My marks weren't good enough. So I joined the army. And it's just that trope of like, they just want to be involved and do something. And that's a very powerful urge when you're young. Like we were all 17 and just wanted to get out and do things. And you're talking about a system where you can join the army. You don't have to pay for anything anymore. Everything's covered. You just got to go, and you get to go far, far away. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that, you know? So it was, to me, and I don't know, it just was very easy for me to create a plausible character. It's not joining the Empire because he's bad. He's joining the Empire because to him, the Empire isn't the worst. It was the Trade Federation, and anybody who would side with them, they tried to enslave my entire planet. why would you even think about being with those people? So
Mhm.
the Empire had to work out pretty good for a lot of people. Otherwise, it wouldn't have lasted for as long as it did.
For sure, for sure. Now, we go back a few months now. You finish your very first episode of this thing. You know, Star Wars fans. How are you feeling? How are the nerves when you release that first episode as far as how it's going to be received?
Um, I was pretty nervous, but I was really confident in it because I thought it
Mhm.
was really good and I thought it was a really unique take.
Mhm.
Um, to be honest, I was the most disappointing aspect of the whole thing was I found that the Star Wars internet community is it's very weird and finicky.
Mhm.
If I don't know how to say it, it's like everybody wants to say that they're championing what's new and what's like different and unique, but they don't unless it's already been made cool for them. If that makes any
It
sense,
does.
and that's understandable because as soon as people hear fan made,
Mhm.
they just kind of go, ugh, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, if Mark Hamill does a fan made Star Wars movie tomorrow, even if he's got like zero movie editing experience, everyone's gonna be like, it's the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Is it? So I was frustrated with that with all my experience and my professional know-how, like nobody was willing to even take it seriously at first, and that's really changed a lot
Mhm.
over the past 9 months as I've consistently put it out because people are like, so you want me to listen, give you an hour of my time, and then I've got to wait for however long to get another one? Whereas now it's like we're more than 10 hours deep and we've got 11 episodes that are out there. Now
Mhm.
it's a bit more, I don't know, uh, it's got more credibility, I guess
Mhm.
is what it does. But I was very nervous when I didn't see people respond to it right away, more so than when I had released it. I was a little bit disappointed and frustrated.
Okay. Yeah, see, now one good thing I think because I follow you on Twitter and like I have a sense of your passion of Star Wars and stuff like that. That's what drew me to it in the first place. I'm 7 episodes deep. I just finished episode 7 2 days ago. Obviously, Christmas hasn't gone, so I don't know how you wrap up in that yet. So I'm looking forward to that.
You're okay.
Yeah,
Number 8, episode 8 is
yeah,
my favorite. I don't think
yeah.
it's like the best in terms of like I knew where I was. My production skills were able to make it
Mhm.
as good as I wanted to, but I think episode 8 is my favorite because we really delve into what I think is the coolest addition to the Star Wars universe with the Disney acquisitions,
Mhm.
and that's the Inquisitors. I think
Yeah.
the Inquisitors are the coolest concept
Mhm.
in Star Wars. And it's just because there's just so much you can do with a Inquisitor. I think they're so
Yeah.
rad.
Oh, they are very cool. I like I the new hierarchy and again even going back to Thrawn and things like that is just these new levels that they added post Return of the Jedi, even because again like you said there are no aliens in the Empire. Like they wouldn't stick them in a stormtrooper costume post clone. It's they're beneath them. They're going to go into those mud trooper states and stuff like that. So to
Yeah.
have these new guys and then to have these in other stories where they've had Dark Jedi and all these things who sneak into these little roles. It's really cool. But anyways, what I was saying about you and your passion with Star Wars, and I think something that's really important about how I see that you see Star Wars in your tweets is that you are a very objective and just a base fan of Star Wars. Because there's so
Oh,
many people who are like, "Oh, this is the worst Star Wars thing ever done." And it's like, well, no, 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 hold on, hold on, hold on. It's Star Wars. It's still
yeah.
awesome.
It's still like I think Chip Zdarsky had this line and it was like I saw the movie about the space wizards. It was a movie about space wizards, and I think that's what he said. And I was like, exactly. Exactly. Like
Yes,
I can that doesn't mean I can't make fun of things that happen in the movies.
of
I
course.
absolutely can, but I refuse to allow myself to get that angry about a movie
Hmm.
that is about space wizards. You
Yeah.
really can't. At the end of the day, even when it's the worst, it's still awesome.
Hmm.
It's still great. Like just relax. It's okay. I mean, if you want me to do a critical analysis, I can,
Hmm.
but I'm a fan. I don't want to have to do a critical analysis all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, You do, but I don't let it ruin things for me,
Yeah.
I guess is the way to say.
Yeah. Well, and the worst thing and this is the argument I keep getting into that keep having to get brought down from is if you did the same critical analysis, if like, you know, the person who's out there going, oh, Rise of Skywalker is the worst movie ever made, not just Star Wars movie, just the worst movie. I'm like, okay, I want you to go and have a real critical look at the original trilogy. And guess what you're going to find? You don't like Star Wars.
Yeah, dude, it's like they're looking for something they want to have happen. It's like they're looking for something in themselves on the screen.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can be honest, like I've left the theater after watching a Star Wars movie and gone, wasn't what I was hoping for. But I've also left the theater and been in shock, being like, was that as good as I thought it was? Like, was that as good? Like, because I think that's like pretty much perfect. Was that perfect? And then you're like, I'm looking for confirmation from my fellow Star Wars fans, like be like, am I wrong? Like when I watched Rebels, Rebels starts out as like happy lappy kid show, like almost like a Treasure Island vibe, you know? But it ends so strong. Like season 4 of Rebels is one of the greatest. I think it's one of the most refreshing takes on Star Wars ever. Like I'm trying to give a fresh take on conflict in the Star Wars universe, in that regardless of sides, there's always victims. No matter what uniform they're wearing, it's still their friends that are dying. Like that's it. Like it just, there's a humanistic element to that I don't feel that has been explored. And I feel that anytime you allow people to say they're the enemy and they're just evil for the sake of it is bad. No matter who you're doing it to, it's bad. And Rebels like kind of gave a new look at Jedi the same way I'm trying to give a new look at the Imperials. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I really feel that Ezra Bridger was on his way to the dark side, and Kanan came in and showed him. I think that show is going to give us, when we eventually see Ezra Bridger again in the Ahsoka Tano series, because I'm convinced that we're going to.
Yeah.
That he is going to have found an entirely new path for the Force that is beyond the Jedi and the Sith of light and dark. I think he's gotten to because I feel like those temples are pre-Jedi, pre-Sith. I feel like when Yoda gives my all-time favorite Star Wars moment, when he talks about how luminous beings are we, not life makes the Force. I feel that they've kind of implied that Ezra found a way to commune with the direct, like concentrated version of the Force, where he's connecting with animals and life forms. I feel like he's going to be almost like that Gardner character that had I think it's not the time gem. He had one of the gems in Thanos' quest, and he had the big Gardner, the cosmic Gardner guy.
Oh yeah.
I almost feel like that's where Ezra Bridger will be, that he will be communing directly with the nature of the Force beyond the light and the dark, almost like the Bendu, which I thought was another great character, voiced by Tom Baker, who is my all-time favorite Doctor Who. Sorry, I'm going off the rails here, man.
No, these are the rails that you want to go off for especially for this show. I mean, every Star Wars episode we do becomes a bit of a problem. I start to dig deep.
I had things I wanted to talk about with like Mud 79, and I'm like, no, man, Kanan's quest, like Kanan's source, and like that's so important. People need to know. Yeah, it's like people need to know everything. Oh, I will just say, like Mud 79 is just like a Vietnam War movie set in the Star Wars universe, and there's all kinds of little Easter eggs in there for big Star Wars fans.
Absolutely, and if you have not seen, if you go on Fred's Twitter at fearless_Fred, you can see the work that goes into these things, and you can just see if people who work in audio understand the work that goes into something like this, but to actually physically see the tracks upon tracks upon tracks upon tracks, and then hear it come out, and it feels natural and simple because you've got the clean sounds in the background and this, and it just sounds like it's just something that naturally happened, like you're sitting outside and reading from your journal. But that's not what's happening. That's a billion different things happening.
there are so many times where there's one scene where it's the very first time they get a call out where they have to go out on patrol.
Mhm.
I have a file, an audio file that has 30 different sounds of someone banging into a desk, because he talks about how he remembers, and this is the way our brains always work. He really remembers that first call out, not for the call out, but because when he got out, the way he hit his leg on the bottom of his desk really hurt. And it bothers him for the rest of the chapter. And I kept listening to the sound of dunk, someone hitting a desk. No, that's not quite right. It's not hollow enough. Dunk, no, that's too hollow. So going through that. And then when he's talking about, this is a big thing from an audio standpoint for me, was because my father was in the infantry for years. And then he went into the mid side of the military when his body just couldn't handle it anymore. And he talks about how you start to be able to identify the sound and range of a weapon instinctively. You can tell, like, if you're in the woods, you'll know this rifle will sound more similar to this than it would if you were in the open. He goes, your brain, you learn to tell, and you can tell the range by the echo and the sound that it takes to get there. So when they're in Mud 79 and he's talking about, we're down behind a berm and it sounded like they're firing A-22 blaster rifles. That's an A-22 blaster rifle sound effect. Like that is, and if it's like he's saying they came off the back of a landing craft, all of them carrying A-280 assault rifles. Those are A-280 assault rifles. That sound that they're making, that's the actual official sound effect for that weapon. And I was that was one of the things that I was surprisingly anal about. Every weapon that they're using, that's the actual sound of that weapon. Because I thought that, like, when you're saying the time to make sure the sound effects are all right, I know nobody cares, but I care.
Yeah.
I care.
And if that time doesn't go in, though, is the big thing. It all goes wrong really fast, and it becomes very apparent to your ear. They don't know why it's not natural, but the fact that it is natural is that work. And there's no lazy way to make that sound like that. And that's why I so highly recommend this series within issue 0. Just go hunt it down, because it is no detail spared by somebody passionate about Star Wars, and it is a good story. I don't know how else to sell that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I made a Twitter feed for it because I realized I was becoming too all like sprawled out with what I was doing with other things, but it's just Star Wars Mud 79 on Twitter. Everything that I post, including like spec art and things like that, because I've got to coincide with the release of the big finale, Kalman Andrzejowski, who has been just the most positive supporting guy because he's such a huge Star Wars fan, and like a pure fan like us. He just loves it. There's a big finale, like a big like crescendo of, to me, it's, I don't know if you've ever read the Assassin's Apprentice series by Robin Hobb. It's just like this fantasy novel series, but I drew a little bit from that with this big finale where you've got an Inquisitor. I don't really want to give anything away. I will just say that there's a bit of a mystery that's set up at the end of the second episode that all comes to a head within the last 15 minutes, and you get all the answers that you wanted.
Nice.
And you're speaking of the sound wave, like the multi-track sessions of the audio. That's where it's suddenly like 15 tracks thick all the time. So that's that. And it's really good. And I'm really stoked for everyone to hear it. And I'm also really stoked for everyone to see the design that Kalman gave us for the art. He drew a picture of that final scene. And after it drops, I'm going to drop the image online. And it's just magnifique.
Awesome. All right. So we talked about Mud 79 being Vietnam in the Star Wars universe. So it became apparent that the movie that had to be done, as we discussed it, was a Vietnam movie, and the movie that was chosen by you, or by us, we come bouncing it back and forth, is we did Platoon.
Absolutely. What a classic. I rewatched it twice just to get ready for this.
Oh man, it was so good. And it's just one of those ones. And what kind of shocked me rewatching it was the fact that I remembered so much of it. I can't say the same for Apocalypse Now or something like that. Like there's a lot of iconic things that you remember vividly, but like Platoon, I can go moment for moment, like from pulling out the shitters all the way to
Yeah, it's such a great movie. And the thing about that movie that I always forget is
Mhm.
how many big stars are in that
Mhm.
movie, and like it's just every scene is just the who's who, and you've got young Keith David, who even when he's that young, his voice is just, oh my God, he's just got Keith David is
Yeah.
my dream voice. Like if I
Oh.
could get Keith David in Mud 79, I've made it. But who would he voice? Like there's nobody epic enough worthy of that
No.
voice. Oh, he's incredible.
He could be just anybody. He could just
Yeah.
is like, this is a baby we found. Hey, how you doing? Like,
Yeah.
oh, he's just brilliant. And like you said too, it was a super young Johnny Depp, and your Willem Dafoe and Scarface Tom Berenger, young babyface Charlie Sheen, obviously.
Yeah.
Forrest Whitaker.
Yes.
Like it's just another guy who dips into the Star Wars universe at some point. Well, I'll tell you, I'm really, really grateful that you came on the show today to just talk about Star Wars with me and nerd out a little bit and talk about your show. It's just been phenomenal. And then to talk about this movie, which was just also phenomenal. So thank you so much for coming. Where can people find you online, and where can people find the podcast and all those good things?
Well, if you want to watch me be crass and make jokes, at fearless_Fred on Twitter and Instagram. I also post a lot of Mud 79 stuff there. But if you want to find the Mud 79 stuff specifically, Star Wars Mud 79 on Twitter, that's where I am. And I post everything there. Like I talk about the cast and the crew members, and I post pictures of the multi-track mixdowns of the sound waves and all that stuff before it comes out. And I also will give little Easter eggs about things that I'm influenced by, and little things that if you're a big Star Wars fan, there's things that get mentioned and I move on and I don't ever touch them again, because that's the way an Easter egg should be.
Yeah.
You know, it should be just something in the background that you don't see. Like in The Believer, which is, we discussed, my favorite episode of Mandalorian. When he jumps on the Slave One, Megs Mayfield grabs, he goes, hand me that rifle. That is a Circa Adventurer model slug thrower, which has incredible penetrative power. That is the exact same model of sniper rifle that is discussed in the 4th episode, that winds up pinning the entire platoon down because somebody who knows how to use it is keeping them pinned down.
Yeah.
But it is also the rifle that belonged to Aurra Singh, the bounty hunter that raised Boba Fett. And that to me is one of the greatest Easter eggs ever, because you and I have seen that rifle slung over Aurra Singh's shoulder in The Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
And that's the same prop that was used in the show too, which is amazing.
Oh, those are brilliant. I always love those things, and I love when people make reference. If you've seen that Star Wars Galaxy, where it's like the making of The Mandalorian, there's a brilliant bit where Jon Favreau's sitting next to George Lucas on set. They were in the massive, or not the massive. What, it doesn't matter. But they were sitting there talking, and he was talking about the Mandalorian's gun, and he's like, "That's the rifle from the holiday special
Yes,
that Boba Fett had." And he's
the
like,
Canadian connection, both of us. That was animated by Nelvana.
You
so
betcha.
There you go.
I bring it up all the time, Nelvana related things that happen here, and it's just it is a part of the company we work for, and he brings it up to George Lucas, and you can instantly see that look on George Lucas's face, like, don't talk to me about the holiday special. And then he's like, it's canon, right? And then he just kind of looks at him, he's like, not really. And just kind of blows him off. But I'm like, it meant something. We just redid the holiday special. It's the second time we've watched it as a podcast for our Christmas episodes. So.
I think that the holiday special is what it is.
Yeah.
But there's two things that stand out to me about that holiday special. Number one, the animated sequence from Nelvana. Oh my God, it's so good. Like with the Boba Fett, it's just like there's some goofy looking aspects of it.
Yeah.
But it's so cool. Like everything about it is so cool.
Yeah.
And when the Imperials are searching the home is probably the scariest you've ever seen the Empire.
Yeah.
Like it's like they are the Gestapo. It's so good. It's so good.
Oh, absolutely. It was the first time my wife ever watched it. She always, for our Christmas episodes, watches whatever with me, and that's the commentary. And it was the first time she ever saw it, and it's the first time we've ever gotten one on video, and the look on her face is just priceless, and she just so confused and so wonderfully. We had words after the show.
Yeah.
All right, Fred, thank you so much for joining us, and next week make sure that you're all joining us. Fred will be back with us, talking, well, in clip form, talking about Platoon. And yeah, thank you so much. I really had a blast talking to you, man.
Dude, thank you, man.
Okay, we're back, and I want to thank Fred again so much for doing that with us, and it was such a good talk. I love talking Star Wars with people, and he's so passionate and so knowledgeable, and he's, you know, you're in good hands if you're going to listen to Mud 79, I would say. But in comparison, if you want to, what's the word I'm looking for, like a starter, like an appetizer for that, we're watching Platoon. How awesome is that? Let's have a listen to that trailer.
We've been kicking other people's asses for so long, I figure it's time we got ours kicked. What happened today is just the beginning. We're gonna lose this war.
If you're gonna get killed in it's better to get it the first few weeks. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm so tired. I think I've made a big mistake coming here.
We're going back into that NBA bunker complex tomorrow.
Skook's a lot smarter than you think.
Well, out there's the beast. He's hungry tonight.
Shut up! Take the pain!
You don't sleep on no fucking ambush.
Lieutenant! What, did you do something?
What are you talking about?
No, you lie! I can't go down, easy!
March! You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
You ain't a firing squad, you piece of shit!
Sometimes I just look at a guy, and I know this fella's not gonna make it.
You waste a lot of people up there with your fucked up bar mission!
Maybe I finally found it, way down here in the mud. Maybe from down here I can start up again, be something I can be proud of.
He's a human being, man!
The stars. There's no right or wrong in them. They're just there.
I don't know, brothers. But I'm hurting real bad inside. Death? Well, you all know about death. Everybody gotta die sometime.
All you got to do is make it out of here.
Hell is the impossibility of reason.
Okay, guys, so that is what we're doing next week, not this week. This week, this is all we're doing. I'm sitting here with my new gimbal tripod, which is what is holding up my camera right now. You can see behind the scenes with some stuff that I just stow off to the side and really piss off my wife. And guys, 2020 is over. I don't know what else to say other than 2020 is over. Let's hope that 2021 is a better year for everybody. I hope it's great for you guys. I hope it's great for us. As always, share your experiences. If you enjoy the show, tell a friend. Rate and review wherever you get this podcast or on YouTube. It helps us get found, and I really appreciate that. And check out our new stuff. Check out our Discord. Check out our Twitch. Follow us on Twitch, and you'll find out when we go. When Todd and I are back together and we're doing our lives and stuff like that, we will actually be recording episodes live on, like, as they go. So, and as we do them, so you can chat with us while we do it and all sorts of fun stuff. And you can find out some of the movies we're doing ahead of time when we do that. So go follow us and wait for the next time we pop up. And sometimes I'll pop up from time to time myself, just playing a few games or doing something fun like that, or just chatting with you guys. You know, breaking the ice. How's it going? All right. We'll see you all next week. Find us at miscastcommentary.com. Email us podcast@miscastcommentary.com. Find us on Twitter at JK Finley, at miscasttodd, wherever he is, and at miscastpodcast. Instagram at miscastcommentary. Join us on Facebook. All those wonderful things. We are around. We're easy to find, and we love you all very much. Here's to 2021. 2021. Let's make it a good one, and we'll see you next week.